Hi, tonight we're gonna talk about origins of ayahuasca. So this is a really wide topic. There's so much to say about it. I tried making a video yesterday. It ended up being over an hour, so I decided against it. I much rather talk about different aspects, different parts of this story in separate videos. So in this one, I'm going to talk about only one part. So how did the natives of Amazon come about an idea to even mix these two plants, chacruna and ayahuasca, to get the brew, to get the life-changing brew of ayahuasca? So whenever you hear about this topic, usually you're gonna hear it in the same way. It's a trope now already. Everybody's saying the same story. So it goes like this. There's over 80,000 plants in Amazon. So it's really amazing. It's beyond human understanding. It's like almost supernatural. It's probably supernatural. How did they come about an idea to mix these two plants? Especially if we know that they're inactive separately. They don't work. If you cook chacruna on its own or ayahuasca on its own, they don't do nothing. So how did they come about this idea to take two plants out of 80,000 and then mix them together to get this really amazing potion? How did it happen? And you always gonna hear a proposed answer. Somebody's gonna offer an answer. It's the shamans, the natives, they say the plants told them. Sometimes they're gonna specify and say that the mapacho, tobacco, told them. So they got the instructions for the brew from tobacco. Now, of course, I'm not satisfied with that answer. I never had plants talking to me, giving instructions. I don't believe that. I have my own theory why those people are saying that. I believe one specially talented shaman had that, poetically talented. He was like a poet. So he came up with that answer when asked, and now everybody's repeating it because they're watching the same videos like we are. Amazon shamans today, they have internet, they watch the same videos. They watch Terence Mckenna and everything. They heard the talk, they know. So what do I think really happened there? First of all, it's a myth that those two plants are inactive separately. They're active. Ayahuasca, the wine, is very active. Harmalas, active ingredients, active compounds in ayahuasca, the wine, they are very active. You get sedated on very low doses. Already you can feel some sedative effect. And on higher doses, people claim to even experience hallucinations. I've tried it multiple times, never took such a high dose of ayahuasca wine itself to experience hallucinations, but it undoubtedly has a sedative effect. While chacruna also is active on its own, yes. Usually people are going to say the DMT, active ingredient of chacruna, doesn't work orally because it gets destroyed, and you need to ingest monoamino oxidase inhibitor first, which is in ayahuasca wine, and then it's going to work. That's true, yes, in most cases. But monoamino oxidase inhibitors are just potentiators. They make things stronger because your monoamino oxidase doesn't get destroyed, right? But we don't have monoamino oxidase always in our body in the same levels. It differs. So one day you have less, one day you have more. So it's gonna work sometimes. And you're gonna have to ingest more, and it's gonna work less, but it's gonna work. And there's even some trip reports on Aerovid and Shroomery where people have been trying that. And it does work. They do complain that it was weak, they were sick, they were vomiting, it's not easy on the stomach, you have to ingest a lot of it, but it does work. So after we know that, now that we know that they do work separately, you don't need mapacho, tobacco, to tell you to mix two plants that work. You're gonna try, of course you're gonna try. So when I was 15, started smoking weed, and I was drinking beer already, alcohol in general, wine and beer. I was drinking it already for like a year and a half every weekend. So my first idea after I tried my first joint was, how would this be if I mixed it with alcohol? That's very natural human reaction to discovery of any drug. Immediately you think, how would it work with that other drug that I know about? So now all of a sudden this wonder seems less, right? When I talk like this about this topic, usually people feel that I'm somehow disrespecting the brew. I'm not. Let me disclaim that in the beginning immediately. I love ayahuasca. I love the brew. It's wonderful. It's amazing. It's everything people say it is. But I don't think the truth is disrespecting anything. And this myth, to me, it's obviously a neo-myth. It's not even old. I have a feeling it's just like 20, 30, maximum 40 years old. And it's been propagated online, and people repeat it, including, again, the shamans who have internet. So everybody's now saying it like a dogma. And I don't like dogmas. I have this urge to always tear dogmas down. Now I want you to come with me and watch a part of a video with part of a conversation of Jordan Peterson with Dennis Mckenna, where they discuss similar topic. And in this video, first time that I see any public persona that talks about ayahuasca regularly to kind of talks against this myth, which I loved. Before, I heard already his brother Terence and Dennis also repeating that myth multiple times, but this is the first time that I hear Dennis speaking against it. So let's see it. So let's see what these two old geezers have to say about it.
Now, you spent some time studying ayahuasca.
Yes.
What an understatement. You spent some time to Dennis Mckenna. Okay. You spent some time, I guess, you know.
And that's kind of an interesting story. So maybe you could tell everybody who's watching and listening how ayahuasca is prepared, and also how unlikely it was that preparation method was discovered. And
see how he's preparing him here for this story. So Jordan is of course less into this than Dennis, so he was setting him up to repeat the same myth again, like how unlikely was it. So he would say it's very unlikely because, you know, we have 80,000 plants there. I have to say that part on its own, about 80,000 plants in Amazon, and people always emphasize that part to make it even more wondrous. How did they come about to pick just these two plants out of 80,000? But in reality, all these 80,000 plants, they're not equally represented in Amazon, right? Some of them are rare, some of them are really rare, some of them grow just in some areas. Excuse me, just a second. Ajde, čuko. Sorry for this, I have 3 dogs at the moment, so they like barking, talking with their neighbors and stuff. It's what it is. So these plants are not equally represented. Some of them are rare, some of them grow just in some areas, while both chacruna and ayahuasca wine are really not rare. They're everywhere. They're very obvious. If you live in Amazon, you're gonna see them almost every day. They are everywhere. It's a very obvious and very widely seen plant in Amazon. So it's not 80,000. At least 20,000 of these 80,000 plants are some really rare or uninteresting moss or grass or I don't know, some orchid that grows on the top of a tree that they don't even see mostly. You can live your entire life in Amazon without seeing that particular orchid ever. So it's way less than 80,000 that go into competition to be like, okay, which ones do we choose to try and get high with? Let's see what they say more.
I'd like to know if you have any more insight into how in the world that ever came about.
Yes.
How in the world?
Yes to both. DMT is a short-acting psychedelic, but it's not orally active by itself. If you consume DMT, if you drink a tea that contains DMT, or, you know, just eat DMT or whatever, it's not active because there are enzymes in the gut, monoamine oxidases, that will inactivate DMT.
Okay, so he's in this part, he's still repeating the myth. Again, this is mostly true, but not completely. Sometimes it's gonna work, and most of the time it's gonna work if you ingest a lot. We don't have monoamino oxidase always ready in our stomachs to destroy anything that comes inside and like just waiting for DMT to come and kill it. It's not like that. It's like nothing is 100% in biology, so nothing is 100% in this case also. There's always some leeway.
Before it's ever absorbed in the active form. What indigenous people have done when they prepare ayahuasca, they combine it with another plant that contains monoamine oxidase inhibitors. This class of compounds called beta-carbolines, very potent, very selective MAO inhibitors. So if you make a beverage, a drink, or decoction is really the technical term, with a plant that contains DMT and a plant that contains these beta-carbolines, then it becomes orally active. And instead of a 10 to 20 minute experience, which is what you get when you smoke DMT or vape DMT, they do that now these days, or inject it even, you get about 20 to 30 minutes of an experience, but in the oral form, it stretches it out to 6 or 7 hours. So it's a very different experience. It's not as intense, but in some way it's deeper, it's more profound. Now, how did this come about? The question always comes up. How did these indigenous people figure out this combination? One plant containing beta-carbolines and another containing DMT. Out of the 80,000 or so species in the Amazon, how did they stumble on?
So he's repeating here this part, but you can notice in his voice, he's also taking a step back from it, like he's talking with quotation marks. I can't hear it. These dogs are gonna drive me crazy. Chuco, ándale.
This one combination? Was it trial and error, or how? If you talk to the people, they will say, well, the plants told us, but to a Western scientist, this doesn't make a lot of sense. The plants told you? What are you talking about? Actually, I think the real story is a little more prosaic in a sense that.
So you'll see now, Dennis has a different theory than me. He does believe that those two plants are inactive separately, which is not true, as I said. But he has another theory that I also kind of like. Let's listen to it.
Is that at a certain point, maybe 1,000 years ago, possibly a little earlier than that, there was a very active, there were different cultures that were living sort of in proximity to each other in the region where Colombia, Venezuela, and Peru now come together. They were also very active in making chicha. They were essentially beer producers. And they had many different kinds of chicha, mostly prepared from manioc. And they were also experimentalists. They were like craft brewers today, sort of. Craft brewers they have their beer, but then they'll just reach for anything on the shelf, or an ingredient will come up and they'll say, oh, let's make a craft brew with kava in it, or with some other plant. Let's make something interesting. Well, the people making the chicha had the same sort of curiosity. And in their medicinal pharmacopoeia, they had the snuffs, right? And they had these snuffs. They had these antidanthera snuffs, which don't require MAO inhibitors because you take them, as a snuff. They also had Banisteriopsis, which is the vine that contains the beta carbonates. They use that separately as a medicinal plant for various reasons, and it has some psychoactivity. Basically, I think they stumbled on this formulation. You know, the plants were in the mix, as it were, and they stumbled on this formulation, but it wasn't entirely trial and error. You know, it was more like an educated guess, not really from the standpoint of biochemistry. They didn't think in terms of monoamine oxidase inhibition and that sort of thing. But they were familiar with the effects of these different plants, and they thought, well, what happens if we mix them? You know, and they did. They had a spectacular result.
So he has actually also this theory. So they basically knew that it works. Dennis thinks they knew it works because they took it as a snuff, which I didn't even think about before. Could be. So could be that they didn't even ingest it. So he said it doesn't work separately, but then it does work as a snuff. So if it works as a snuff, if it works when it's snorted, and then you have this other plant that works whatever you do with it, ayahuasca, the wine, harmalas are going to work anyhow. Of course you're going to try and mix it. And I like his idea of beer being the, let's say, accelerator of the idea. So yeah, that's about it. So I hope we debunked the myth. Plants didn't tell him anything. And that myth itself, again, I have to emphasize this part, which is I hold dear. My opinion. It's my opinion, but I hold it dear. That today, when asked, all these shamans, quotation marks, are telling you what I think about it already. We'll talk about it more in other videos. About the institution of shamans itself. So they watch YouTube also. So when you ask your shaman next time you go to Peru and you ask them again the same story, the same question, don't be surprised he tells you the same story, which it doesn't prove that it's true. It just proves that he watches YouTube. So that's it. I hope you like this video. Let me introduce my dogs to you since they're here. This is Mali, the smaller one. Mali in Croatian means little one, but it's in a masculine form, and she's a female, so Mali. And this is Duna. I'll tell you the origin of their names, why they came to have these names. There's a story. I'll tell you that next time I talk about them. So that's it. Thanks for watching this video. See you in the next one. Bye.